In this edition of Southern Newsweek, the Dunedin City Council tells the government we want to keep and expand Southern hospital services. In a strange twist of ironies, the World Vision CEO flies into Queenstown to talk about poverty, refugees and homelessness. And powdered carbon and ultraviolet light bring a massive improvement to Bluff and Invercargill drinking water. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. The Dunedin City Council is calling on central government to redevelop Dunedin Hospital in the centre of the city. The council also wants a clear commitment that a top-flight teaching hospital will be retained for Dunedin and the wider Otago Southland region.
Dunedin City Councillors launched the campaign in the north of the city this afternoon within spitting distance of Dunedin Public Hospital. Councillors Aaron Hawkins and David Benson Pope are leading the charge. Councillor Hawkins says it's an issue of accessibility for all.
We've launched a public campaign calling on people in Dunedin to lobby Cabinet to take off the table any option that they're currently considering to rebuild Dunedin Hospital outside of the city centre. A top-flight teaching hospital in downtown Dunedin is non-negotiable for us as a council and as a community.
His sentiments are echoed by Councillor Benson Pope, who believes central government has made some dreadful decisions about Dunedin in the past.
Well, I've been watching the strength of feeling and the lack of action from government about this issue, and I guess the success of the courthouse campaign provides us with a really good model of how we can go about it. The tools are a bit different this time because it's a much wider based web campaign, but we just won't tolerate, it's not negotiable to suggest that the hospital's not going to be rebuilt in the central city. And so that's why the council, why Aaron and I raised that issue by way of notice of motion, why it was overwhelmingly supported by elected members.
The pair were supported by fellow councillors and concerned citizens in Frederick Street this afternoon, where they began distributing flyers to people and businesses in the area. After the brief rally, councillors were off on their mission to ask for the public's help to keep the rebuild of Dunedin Public Hospital in a central city location. Daryl Baser, The South Today.
As the old saying goes, coughs and sneezes spread diseases, and that's all the more reason to stay away from Dunedin's emergency department this autumn. Volunteers say the department is steadily filling with cases of people who've come down with the lurgy, but the hospital advises that in all cases, patients should first seek a GP and a day off work.
If you're one of the early victims of the cough and cold season, stay away from the ED department. That's the message at Dunedin Hospital this autumn.
Emergency room has been pretty busy over the last couple of weeks. I think they really should go to their family doctor. But if that's not possible, then they come here and we treat them and get them better.
I'm Roselle LeBone here outside the emergency department at Dunedin Hospital. This area is bound to see a lot more action now that the sniffle season is here. With the seasonal changes come the usual raft of coughs and colds spread around the office, which is why it's more important than ever to take a day off work if you need to. You won't just get better quicker, your workmates will thank you for it.
The real problem in winter is influenza and a few other similar viral illnesses that are much more severe than a cold, and you can tell that's the sort of thing that gives you a high fever, gives you pains all over, makes you feel terrible. That's influenza.
It's also vital to get the flu jab if it's right for you.
We think it's important for older people, and it's funded and supported. They can get it through their GP. And then for people with chronic illnesses like chronic chest conditions.
Influenza injections are being offered now at your nearest healthcare provider. Roselle LeBone, The South Today.
World Vision CEO Chris Clark touched down in Queenstown recently to address a small group on poverty in the Pacific and the Syrian refugee crisis. Clark discussed the Syrian crisis affecting children, forcing them to move to Lebanon and Turkey. He also spoke of malnutrition, education and healthcare issues affecting the Pacific. Mina Amso has more.
This is Adil. He's 12 and wants to be a doctor. He's one of millions of Syrian refugee children displaced and living in a refugee camp.
And every morning he goes out and he digs the ground, or he picks tomatoes, or he chops firewood for the local farmer. What he's doing is slowly he's earning money, and his great vision is actually earn enough money that he can build a great big house for his mother and his sisters so that they'll be safe. He's 12 years old, he should be playing football, he should be in school, and yet what he's doing is he's thinking about the future of his family and how he can look after them.
Adol's father died. The 7-year-long crisis in Syria has led 5 million people to move out of Syria into neighbouring countries.
So a lot of the work that World Vision's been doing is with these families who are severely traumatised, children who have seen things that you'd never wish a child to experience, who are now living in a very simple tent through the storms of winter, through the snow of winter in places like Lebanon, and then through the great heat of summer. So what we're doing is making sure that they've got the basics of life, and really talking about the basics. We're talking about sanitation and hygiene and water and food.
But Clark says real concern is the psychosocial damage children are suffering today.
These children have been severely traumatised. They've seen their schools bombed, in many cases they've lost parents. No one is unaffected by the Syrian crisis.
World Vision is working to create a new sense of normalcy for these children.
One of the exciting things we do is we take these children into a school effectively, and we call it a child-friendly space, and over about a period of 12 weeks we help these children come to terms with the grief that they've experienced and give them a sense that there is still a hope and still opportunity for them as young children. And it's profound work. I was in a camp very recently in Lebanon with a mum, and she started crying, and she said to me, "This is the first time I've heard my daughter laugh in 4 years." So it's great work.
Clark says more New Zealanders are putting their hands up to help, and in the last 3 years alone, they've given over $7 million through World Vision to help support the Syrian crisis.
New Zealanders are incredibly generous and responded really in a way which is magnificent. So much so that other countries around the world have been noticing the response of New Zealand.
Clark says both the crisis in Syria and the Pacific are pressing issues.
It's hard to say which is the more pressing. I think as New Zealanders we have a real responsibility for the Pacific, yet as humanitarians we must respond to this global crisis of refugees.
Clark also met with some young people in Dunedin on Monday. He said it was extraordinary to see how passionate young people are to make a difference. Mina Amso, The South Today.
Hopes a new strain of the rabbit-killing virus RHD might be released this autumn have been dashed. The virus is now not likely to be available until at least March next year. That has led to a call to farmers not to take matters into their own hands as they did 20 years ago. Here's Mark Price.
Autumn is a time when rabbit numbers are at full strength, and this autumn is when the Otago Regional Council had hoped it would be spreading RHD V1K5.
Hi, I'm Mark Price in Wanaka. RHD V1K5 is a variation on the rabbit-killing disease introduced illegally by farmers in Otago in 1997 after plans to bring it in legally were turned down by the Ministry of Health.
Otago Federated Farmers President Phil Hunt remembers having his car searched by police looking for those responsible for releasing the virus. Who did it was never revealed publicly. However, Mr Hunt believes it's unlikely farmers will act illegally this time.
I wouldn't say never, but I don't think that there is the pressure on farmers that there was, 20 years ago. And I guess if you look back, what happened 20 years ago, there've probably been 7 or 8 years leading up to that where the official introduction of the virus was considered and then was turned down by various arms of the government. So whereas here it looks as though the government agencies are all trying to work together to bring the new strain of the virus in for to do the job and to do it well. So I can't see that farmers will be taking it into their own hands. I think they would be stupid to do that.
Announcing the 1-year delay, the group planning the introduction, led by Environment Canterbury, has warned farmers an illegal or unmanaged release would significantly compromise the benefits. And it could also bring a rogue virus into New Zealand that might kill species other than rabbits. Mr Hunt says waiting for the virus is frustrating.
It's looking promising. There seems to be a few bureaucratic hurdles that are in the way, which it's frustrating, but it's not the end of the world.
While they wait, farmers will be weighing up whether or not they need to carry out a poisoning program on their properties this winter. I'm Mark Price for the South Today.
The nearly $12 million upgrade to Invercargill and Bluff's drinking water system is almost complete. Work at the Branksholm water treatment plant began in May 2016. Invercargill City Council Water Manager Alistair Murray says once the upgrade's finished in the next few weeks, it'll get rid of the earthy taste in the city's water. Until then, he suggests people refrigerate drinking water rather than boil it to better remove the taste. The new system uses a mixture of powder-activated carbon and ultraviolet light to purify the water. Coming up on Southern Newsweek, roll up, the carnies are in town. And those with an interest in history and politics may be interested in a Polish exhibition hitting the Dunedin CBD. Welcome back. Roll up and enter the dark and ruthless Victorian underbelly of hucksters, mediums and carnies. Artists Lizzie Tolmash and David Ladderman bring wholesome Victorian variety entertainment to Dunedin. Ladderman says their show entitled Mr. and Mrs. Alexander, Sideshows and Psychics is a love letter to the golden age of variety entertainment.
When magic and spiritualism was captivating audiences and the public attention alike, magic seemed like science, science seemed like magic.
The show was inspired by real accounts of travelling variety performers of the late 19th century. Tolmash says the show has a lot of laughs and a range of performance arts.
They'll see sleight of hand, so the old cup and balls, the shell game, which is still conning audiences in Vegas today. So you'll see balls disappearing and appearing and reappearing and multiplying and then turning into fruit. You'll also see spoon bending, like Uri Geller, metal bending and twisting in front of your eyes. You'll see mind reading.
Like the performers they portray, the travelling duo rarely see their native home of Christchurch. They're performed in 5 countries and all across New Zealand, from Kaitaia to Stewart Island. It was a wrap this past weekend at the 2017 ID Fashion Week. Friday and Saturday nights saw the final catwalk shows at Dunedin's railway station and the concluding note of another year of fashion, food and photography. But ID Dunedin Fashion Committee Chairwoman Cherry Lucas said because of Adele's Auckland concerts, the event would end up at a significant loss similar to last year's of nearly $55,000.
The stars were aligned and the classics resurrected at this weekend's ID Fashion Wrap runway shows. Dunedin fashion establishment Nom D stood alongside visiting designer Paolo Melem Anderson, part of this year's Emerging Designer judging panel. Anderson, who has created collections for Chloe, Margiela, Marni and Zadig and Voltaire, presented all the pieces he has gifted to his mother over the course of his career to date. Margie Robertson's latest for Nom D turned back the clock to where it all began, the rock and roll spirit of 1986 Dunedin. Meanwhile, Dada brought a Dali-esque sense of the absurd and a childlike spirit with their balloon animal adornments. As the sun set, the lights reaching out across the town from the railway station signified another ending of another show until next year. Roselle LeBone, The South Today.
An exhibition that was brought to New Zealand by the Polish Embassy in Wellington is now being shown in the Dunedin Community Gallery. It includes 21 posters from leading Polish artists depicting the history of Polish theatre and indirectly Polish politics. There remains a small but active Polish community in Dunedin. Many of the posters push the boundaries of what was politically and socially acceptable when they were distributed.
Showing issues of being independent, free speech, and under communist rules. So the artists often they were conveying the message through art in form of the theatre poster.
There are also international plays represented, written by French and German playwrights, but reimagined by Polish artists. After the break on Southern Newsweek, good character building stuff for Longford Intermediate School, and a Wanaka man is set to represent New Zealand in an unusual event in the Netherlands. Welcome back. Gore-based Longford Intermediate School pupils had the chance to build relationships with fellow pupils in a fun way at Manawaka Day. Longford Intermediate teacher Candice Adams says Manawaka Day is a series of water-based challenges where students work as a team. At the start of the year, the pupils were split into house groups called waka. The groups compete in competitions throughout the year and points earned by pupils go towards their waka. The biggest tractor ever seen in Southland in Otago recently arrived at AgriCenter's South Gore branch. The Case Steiger Quadtrack 600 weighs in at 25 tonne. It's valued at $700,000, purchased by Glen Islay, which has farms in Southland and South Otago. AgriCentre South salesman Lindsay Stevens sold the tractor out of the Gore branch. He says the Glen Islay farms require a powerful machine to tow a 6-metre cross-slot drill.
It's a 608 horsepower tractor, which will power boost to 670 horsepower.
It has an 1,800 litre fuel tank and will be sure to turn heads on roads in the lower south. And finally, Wanaka barman Ricky Barbara will represent New Zealand in an unusual event in the Netherlands in September. Barbara has just won a competition in Auckland ahead of about 100 other barmen and women to pour the country's best Heineken beer. He's now eligible to compete at a similar event in the brewing company's hometown of Amsterdam. The South Today went to Wanaka's Trout Bar to find out how he did it.
And quiet, please. Okay. Here we go for Heineken. So we've got to pour at a nice angle to get the head building, 45 degrees. To overflow. Skim and seal. They serve it up like that.
So can you explain what it was that gave you the edge in this competition, do you think?
I think just practice, just going through the motions of how Heineken wants it poured, pouring lots of beers for the boys in the kitchen and all the regulars, lots of hardy drinkers.
For the average punter coming in, how can they tell if their beer's been poured properly or not? What are they looking for?
Perfect beer, poured properly, nice head on it, and it should be sitting in the star. The red star there on the Heineken glass, head should be sitting just in there, which is the right amount to let it continue and stay right through the beer, which keeps it tasting fresh the whole way through. If it doesn't have it, it goes flat. So.
Does the taste any? I was about to ask you. Does it taste any different for having it poured properly and not having it poured properly?
It does. It does. People will notice it will go flat if it's not poured properly. If it's got a little tiny bit of head, it'll disappear and the bubbles will go out and it will go flat very fast. Unless you're drinking it at super speed, then you might not.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, or you can keep up with Southern News via our website, channel39.co.nz. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.